Welcome to the 14th episode of Rodin Pass Agricultural Revolution. In this episode we have three main objectives to establish and boost the agricultural production of our new village. First, we need to found it and build the basic structures. Then we must attract new families and finally develop huge and highly productive crop fields. And for today's episode we're accompanied by Schubert's Piano Sonata V845. Let's get started. In the previous episode, we consolidated the second region of the Rodin Pass and increased its meat production to absolutely spectacular levels. Now that we already have two large, well-developed cities, all that's left is to civilize this new region and its agricultural village before the epic finale of the series, where we'll also fortify this side of the valley. That will give us a megacity of three highly urbanized and fully fortified regions. Possibly one of the most spectacular city ever published on the High Peaks map so far. And I say published because I'm sure there are players out there building absolute urbanistic masterpieces, maybe one of you. But since they don't publish any content, we'll never see them, which is totally fine, of course. Alright, enough chit chat, let's get to work. Time to found the new village. This location should work nicely, close to the forest, crucial for early development. We begin by building houses since the initial stock of food and materials in new colonies allows us to. And we start specifically with the houses that include vegetable gardens because the early game challenge of generating growth requires increasing approval and food diversity is the key. So those gardens need to start producing as soon as possible. Whoa, we've got a plot with an amazing amount of backyard space. Unlike the main cities, we won't build many large garden houses here. The population of this village will be quite modest, so these two houses should be enough. Let's build a well, which I sometimes forget. And also the marketplace, which won't be anything fancy, just a proper little village market. Since I already know this whole area will be eventually urbanized, I'll clear out the trees to make the layout easier. Let's see if we can fit a house nicely on this odd-shaped plot. Looks like it would end up without a backyard, and in a village with very few houses, that's not ideal. So, time for a little road simulator. Perfect. Now yes, a lovely house with a proper backyard. Now let's move on to the production buildings, starting with logs, obviously. A hunting cabin near the deer. And let's connect the village with this forest area over here. These roads will also help us later when designing the fields. and this will be the right location for the hunting camp. And here the logging camp. Now we start clearing the areas that we're sure will become future crop fields, while also marking off the forest we do want to keep, like the one with the deer. Technically, even if we cleared the deer forest, they would just migrate somewhere else, no big deal. But I really like where they spawned. They're reasonably close to the village, but they don't interfere with the field layout I had in mind, and aesthetically, this whole region will look much nicer with that forest instead of being completely bare. Moving the wood-related buildings again, and I promise this time I leave them there for a while. Now it's time to plan the logistics area of the village. Even though it will be smaller, it's just as important. I always try to place all storage buildings close together, relatively central, and above all, close to the marketplace. Although they don't need to be right next to it. But keep in mind, the warehouse to market product flow happens constantly throughout the game, so we don't want long distances for that. The most efficient design would be a circular city with warehouses and markets at the epicenter, surrounded by houses and production buildings, everything distributed radially and without long distances. Basically, kind of Frostpunk. But maximizing efficiency has a big aesthetic and creative cost, so I prefer a balance between what works and what I like to see, and Manor Lords allows that perfectly. There are many ways to make a city functional while giving it the layout we enjoy, and that's one of the things I love most about the game. As you can see, I don't settle for the first version of anything. Since this will be a small village, I want to pamper it a bit. I almost have it, but before finalizing the buildings, I want to be sure of where I'll place key constructions like the church. And as you can see, Aetius once again ignoring his own advice to build roads in small sections, and paying the price, of course. In fact, we're entering a whole session of Road Simulator, because to fully visualize the village, I need to be clear about its boundaries, and perhaps the most important boundary of all are the future fortifications. The initial camp location is sabotaging us a bit there. As for the farmsteads that will manage the fields, it would be ideal to have them in a fairly central area relative to most crop fields. But enough theory, let's draw some roads. Generally speaking, the fortress will follow something like this layout. Obviously, it won't be a perfect straight defensive line, but it will serve as a reference. Here we'll have the commercial area, and even though the village will be small, its trading activity will be strong thanks to all the raw materials produced by the fields. And this other line will roughly delimit where we'll place the manor house and the heavily fortified section of this region, plus the palisade that will cut across it. And Aetius, why do you draw two lines to see where the palisade goes? Well, because it's going to be a double palisade, a fairly elaborate one. I actually haven't explained this yet, but the enemies of the Rodin Pass don't come from the south, they come from the north. So the northern side will be doubly fortified. I'm still not sure where the windmills will go. The farmsteads will be around here, optimal location and aesthetically nice. This second one doesn't fit the way I want, so road simulator again. And with that, we can start prioritizing constructions, first the houses, and start developing the village. More or less, I now have the mental map of how it will all look. Important, as always, get that second ox as soon as possible. I'm cancelling the trading post for now to free up logs and expanding housing, which is a priority to avoid the lack of housing penalty. Now that the starting camp is gone, we finish the road. We assign a hunter now since food stocks are starting to drop. First vegetable garden, extremely important, although it's already November, so it won't produce anything until next spring. Careful, we're running out of food and we don't want penalties stacking up. But we assigned a worker to hunting very recently, so they should be able to carry us through until spring. And we're also running out of fuel, gotta fix that fast. Both food and fuel are now starting to stabilize. Because we have very few workers, it's worth rotating a single family between warehouse and granary, so they keep supplying firewood and food to the market. Now it is a good time to build the church. That approval bonus is essential. But Aetius, of course, you couldn't just build it. You had to make a whole mess with the roads first. I should have been a civil engineer. Actually, better no. I would bankrupt any country building and rebuilding their roads. Indeed, good thing roads are free manor lords, otherwise all my cities would have beautiful streets and everyone would starve to death. Anyway, we finally built the church. And while we're at it, let's decorate it. A chicken coop so we'll have eggs, more food diversity for the markets. Let's prioritize church construction as we want it up and running as soon as possible. And, by the way, something I learned from a subscriber, you don't need to assign any family to the church to get its approval bonus. Assigned families are just grave diggers. The priest comes by default, like airbags in cars. Next, we set up the first trade between the nearby city and the agricultural village. The village will receive apples in exchange for planks. We resume construction of the trading post, which we'll start using shortly. And now we build more houses to make room for the new incoming families. We can see the carriers heading out to pick up apples for the trade. Indeed, some apples have already arrived. And with this house and all the buildings we've constructed so far, we now have everything needed to raise and maintain approval above 50% and generate population growth. Objective achieved. Now it's time to attract the first new family so the village can start growing, but before that, let's visit the nearby city. It's running low on fuel, so at least temporarily we'll boost firewood production. And the markets are overwhelmed. We're reinforcing them immediately. In fact, we have so many idle families now that we barely know what to assign them to. Well, actually, yes, we will progressively need more pack stations because the ones in this city and the ones in the south are working at full capacity, doing trade between the large cities. We'll build a few more dedicated mainly to handling trade between this city and the new agricultural village. Because eventually this new village will supply bread, barley and linen to the other two. We'll build the pack stations here, and while we're at it, we'll urbanize this area a bit with more houses. Perfect. And back to the village, which leveled up a moment ago. I'm deciding which technology to unlock. Definitely heading toward the tech that doubles bread production. And suddenly I remembered there was another food source. There was fish. It's as if everything beyond the spot where I planned the fortification line simply didn't exist. And definitely that fishing node is going to be very useful for growth. That's fine. Approval is dragging a lot of penalties right now, but they'll disappear soon and the food diversity bonuses will kick in, boosting approval incredibly fast. We buy another rocks. And seeing that the bastard of the king keeps raising taxes, and in order not to squeeze the southern city any further, we're going to build a temporary manor house in the central city. That way we can claim taxes here as well and the treasury will start skyrocketing. And honestly, I fantasize about the day we can challenge the king who keeps taxing us. Even better, being able to customize him and put the face of a certain corrupt former king of Spain on him. Which villain would you choose from your country if that would be possible? Indeed, I think this would make for a fascinating endgame challenge, like a little button that says "Challenge the King." Then you would have to resist certain amount of time against waves of huge royal armies. And if you defeat them all and your city holds, you gain independence for your domains and the game ends. With the option to keep playing in sandbox mode after that. What do you think? By the way, this doesn't even sound like a particularly hard mechanic to implement in a mod, unless it eventually becomes an official feature. So I'm throwing ideas out there. I know nothing about modding, but if any of those modding geniuses are watching, there you go. The amnesiac Baron again, unable to remember the previous 34 times we defeated him. Well, here we go again, time to fight. The good news, we now have two massive armies, one in the north, one in the south. Oops, we left the militia stranded somewhere in the middle. Let's dissolve them and summon them again near the fortified entrance to get there faster. We flank them and this is won in no time. These bandits don't stand a chance. We disband these mercenary units, but we'll hire them again shortly at full strength. In the Rodin Pass, we no longer spare any expenses. And now we charge straight at these other Baron units to finish this claim quickly. Crushing victory and the manor house is complete. We start collecting taxes, 7% will be more than enough. Meanwhile, in the new village, we've achieved food diversity and the approval bonuses are kicking in. Approval is already above 50%, so a new family will arrive imminently. We hire all mercenaries again, because we can. And then I find a weird bug I've never seen before. The mercenaries are somewhere off in a strange part of the map, not appearing on the visible area. But they are moving toward wherever I send them, coming from some mysterious unseen place. Out of curiosity, I'll just let them walk and see where they pop out, if they do. But let's get back to what matters, gaining population growth. Look at the mercenaries, they're traveling through secret tunnels inside the mountain. Are they dwarven mercenary companies? Did they flee Moria, running from the Balrog? And look at that, population growth achieved, a new family has arrived in the village. Objective complete. Look how lovely the village is turning out. And the central region of the Rodin Pass, I'm in love with it. And don't even get me started on the south. Well, now it's time to develop the crop fields, but first we need to expand the village a bit more so it can continue growing. Because without new inhabitants, there will be no one to work the fields. A malt house, very necessary here since we'll be growing tons of barley. Let's start exploiting this salt deposit so it stops getting in the way of the future fields. And this stone deposit too. And now, yes, full focus on the fields. First we build the second farm since one alone won't be enough to manage all the fields. And since we'll be using oxen for the fields, we build the stables nearby. Perfect. We'll try to make almost all fields one morgen in size, First because I don't like decimals, and second because it makes counting much easier. Each plot is worth 1, so it's practical. What a streak. 2 1 Morgan Fields in a row. Amazing. This access path to the future fortress isn't convincing me, so time for a bit of Road Simulator. Here I'm missing a little path to break up the fields a bit and improve access. I think I'll get it eventually. Finally. Nope, this area is rebellious. Now, yes, let's redo the access to the future fortress, though I wouldn't bet my life this will be the final version. We'll leave this empty spot until the mine runs out of resources. We'll also need a couple of windmills, which look fantastic too. In their case, their placement is important. You need to make sure there are no trees nearby, since that reduces productivity. We're short on planks to build the second one. We move the hunting cabin again since it's sitting right in the middle of the field area. And with that, we pretty much have everything. Related to managing the fields, crop rotation, etc., it would be nice to have an interface option to manage multiple fields at once, or at least being able to copy configurations. Not essential, but definitely comfortable. Now we can finally get a nearly definitive idea of how the fields will look. But then winter arrives and hides everything, so we'll wait until spring to see it properly and finish the episode. So let's take advantage and continue developing the village, which still isn't at its full potential. The most important tech now is the bakery upgrade to double bread production, which will later trade with the other two regions of the Rodin Pass. And for that, we need to level up the village once more. There we go, tech unlocked, and we can now build bakeries. Here's our first bread oven. Let's see if we can finally clear out all the salt so we can complete the fields 100%. Meanwhile, check out the treasury. Ever since we built the manor house in the second city, in barely a year we've doubled it. Imagine what will happen once this third region starts generating income and we collect taxes here too. Look, the dwarfs of Moria have arrived, emerging from their secret tunnels in the mountains. Strange bug. We assign the first workers to the fields. They won't be able to handle everything, but they'll harvest something. We move the wood-cutting buildings again, placing them closer to the forest. This area will work well since the fortifications will pass through here, and as you know, I like keeping clear areas around fortifications for strategic reasons. To force workers to collect these planks on the ground, we're going to build a nearby structure that requires them. But actually, there's a much more efficient method, thanks to a subscriber's tip, which I'll use in future episodes. Go to a warehouse and restrict its work area precisely to where those resources are on the ground. Super effective. And in 300 hours of gameplay, it had never occurred to me. So, another example of how we all learn from each other in this amazing community. And with this final plot, the fields are complete, objective achieved. And now yes, we can finally take a proper look at the enormous fields and the new village in all its splendor. A beautiful agricultural village at the foot of an imposing city, connected by a sea of apple orchards to the south. The origin of it all, the seat of the Rodin Pass, which is already in an advanced state of maturity, and which soon will finish by sealing the valley with impressive fortifications and some final touches to integrate all regions, forming an incredible fortified mega city. And with that, all regions are now civilized and developed, and we're ready for the final stretch of the series. In the next episode, we'll prepare and plan the construction of a network of fortresses that will protect the borders of two regions at once, ensuring the entire northern front remains sealed and protected from any enemy. So, what did you think of the development of the fields of this new agricultural region? If you have any ideas or suggestions, I would love to read them in the comments. See you in the next episode.